Bordered by the colorful Wasatch Mountains to the east and the Great Salt Lake to the west, northern Utah's Hill Air Force Base is home for missions for the United States Air Force, the Department of Defense, and other national organizations. Groundbreaking for construction of Hill Air Force Base occurred in 1940. The base's history reflects the heritage of the United States Air Force and, in particular, Air Force Materiel Command. Spanning nearly 7,000 acres, the base is surrounded by the supportive communities of Layton, Clearfield, Sunset, Roy, Riverdale, Ogden, and South Weaver. Employing more than 24,000 military, civilian, and contract personnel, Hill Air Force Base, which is part of the Air Force Sustainment Center, is the second largest base in the Air Force by population and geographic size. The 75th Air Base Wing is the base host unit, managing 1 million acres and more than 1,700 facilities valued at more than $4 billion. The wing delivers exceptional support to all of its mission partners through its Civil Engineering Group, Mission Support Group, Medical Group, Communications and Informations Directorate, and several wing staff agencies, Chapel, Finance, Legal, Public Affairs, and other operations support functions. Additionally, the 75th is the Air Force's single provider of the Standard Air Munitions Packages, or STAMP, to support wartime taskings across the globe. Nearly half of the base's real estate is dedicated to the safe storage, depot-level maintenance, and rapid processing of lethal munitions, ensuring warfighters have the combat power to fight and win our nation's wars. The wing also operates one of the top attractions in northern Utah, the Hill Aerospace Museum. The 75th is responsible for providing support to the Ogden Air Logistics Complex, 388th and 419th Fighter Wings, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, ICBM Directorate, and more than 50 other mission partners. All of these partners, each playing a critical role in our nation's defense, are collectively known as Team Hill. The largest organization on Hill Air Force Base is the Ogden Air Logistics Complex, employing nearly 9,000 military, civilian, and contract personnel. The complex is responsible for providing logistics and maintenance support for the nation's premier fighters, including the F-35 Lightning II, F-22 Raptor, F-16 Fighting Falcon, and the A-10 Thunderbolt II. In addition, it maintains the C-130 Hercules, the T-38 Talon, and 27 other actively flying and proven weapon systems. The ALC is one of the leading Department of Defense providers of software, hydraulics, secondary power systems, composites, and ICBM rocket motors. The complex is also the Air Force's landing gear center for industrial and technical expertise. The Ogden Air Logistics Complex operates the Department of Defense's Aircraft Regeneration, Storage, and Preservation Facility at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, and additional maintenance operations in Japan, Colorado, Nebraska, Texas, Florida, California, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Montana. Two of the most visible units at Hill Air Force Base are the active duty 388th and Reserve 419th Fighter Wings. Together, they fly and maintain the Air Force's first combat-coded F-35A Lightning II fighter aircraft. The 388th Fighter Wing is an Air Combat Command unit made up of 1,800 active duty and civil service professionals who deliver game-changing combat capability, standing ready to deploy worldwide at any time. Active duty pilots, maintainers, and support personnel work side by side in a total force partnership with the 419th Fighter Wing, a reserve unit of 1,200 personnel. The 419th is the only Air Force Reserve Wing in Utah and is made up of 3 groups and 10 squadrons. In addition to providing F-35 combat capability, the wing has a full-spectrum mission support role. The 388th Fighter Wing operates the Utah Test and Training Range, a 1 million acre land space in Utah's West Desert. The UTR provides training capabilities for our combat air forces and test and evaluation of new and existing Department of Defense weapons, and is used by militaries worldwide. The Air Force Lifecycle Management Center is responsible for total lifecycle management of Air Force and coalition partner weapon systems and subsystems. At Hill Air Force Base, more than 2,700 military, civilian, and contract employees provide complete management for the host of programs and associated services. The LCMC portfolio includes cradle-to-grave management of air-delivered weapons, early warning radar systems, and mature and proven aircraft systems. the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Systems Directorate, which reports to the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center at Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico, is responsible for the acquisition and modernization required to sustain the Minuteman III ICBM force, as well as the nation's newest ICBM, the Ground-Based Strategic Deterrent System, an $86 billion total system replacement for the Minuteman III. The Directorate is responsible for a $22 billion portfolio supporting the acquisition, systems engineering, depot repair, and modernization required to sustain our nation's silo-based ICBM fleet. The Directorate delivers safe, secure, responsive, and on-time, on-target nuclear deterrent force to the warfighter as the nation's nucleus for the ICBM development, acquisition, and sustainment. In order to accommodate Team Hill's many current and emerging missions, it's become necessary to find unique and cost-effective ways of modernizing the base's infrastructure. In response to demands on the base's resources and infrastructure, Hill Air Force Base partnered with private developers to create a mixed-use commercial development on nearly 550 acres on the installation's west side, adjacent to Interstate 15. As the largest enhanced-use lease project in the Department of Defense, Falcon Hill National Aerospace Research Park provides new office and research space for roughly 6,000 Hill Air Force Base personnel and contractors, as well as retail establishments, restaurants, and other commercial development. Team Hill has built a proud heritage and enjoys tremendous support from the local community. This outpouring of support for our airmen and civilians who serve is a visible reminder of the community's patriotism and enduring commitment to our nation's military. They are vital to Hill Air Force Base's continued mission success. Team Hill is committed to our nation's security by sustaining America's warfighters, protecting air power, and deploying airmen to engage in war, deterring aggression, and maintaining peace around the world. We will meet any challenge, overcome any obstacle, and defeat any enemy. This is Team Hill.
Mentoring to me is about giving back, pouring into someone's life, knowledge, guidance, an understanding to help them to understand things. So it's it's a two-way street of trust, respect, and accountability that you have as a mentor and as a mentee. So, and that's what mentoring has meant to me over the years, being a mentor and as a mentee. Those key factors there have been great to help me get to where I am and to give back to others, to help, as I say, pour into their lives from a personal and a professional perspective, to help them reach their goals that they're trying to achieve personally and educational-wise, that feeds into their careers, to help them reach the goals, set goals, and achieve those goals. So that's what mentoring has meant to me, as I say, being a mentor and a mentee.
LOAU members, friends, family, colleagues, and guests. Well, shall I just say Log Nation, good morning. I hope you remain well and I hope you remain safe as we continue to navigate these ongoing COVID times while not skipping a beat as we continue to provide steady and, as always, dependable, ongoing warfighter support. Listen, we are extremely excited to open up LOAU University this year and provide tailored and focused content you asked for. Content that will facilitate your leadership and facilitate your professional development journey while serving our great nation and our great Air Force. Our aim, our purpose, our vision, if you will, as LOAU, is to be that cutting-edge professional development association that provides relevant, real, and solution-oriented learning and collaboration opportunities to our logistics, acquisition, and technology professionals across our Department of Defense, industry, and academia communities. And I suspect that for many of us, this is probably the first time that we have experienced and endured for several months now a pandemic type environment. And though COVID-19 unfortunately put our annual logistics symposium in flux, at the end of the day, when the jets have been recovered, when our supply chain has provided critical supplies and parts, when our munitions and our fuel support has been readily provided without interruption, and our airmen and families remain safe and secure, our team, or better put, I think, your team of LOA volunteers has worked tirelessly across the globe. We demonstrated that LOA was always ready to survive, sustain, and remain relevant, so we could continue supporting our community and ensuring you had a place to focus on the logistics profession of arms. As we know, our mission is to inspire. Our mission is to connect our members by providing value-added professional development and educational opportunities through strategic engagement with not only our military leaders, but also our defense industry and academia partners as well. This year is no different. COVID may have altered the medium, and COVID may have altered the approach, wherein the LOA platform delivers is phenomenal support to our 1,500 plus members. You know, for example, I just mentioned COVID may have altered, for example, our postponed 2020 LOA symposium. But make no mistake, COVID did not alter this organization's spirit, its drive, its mission, as we adjust fire and do what Loggies have always done and will always do. And that is simply to deliver, be it live or be it virtual. LOA fellowship, LOA mentorship, LOA professional development, and more will not in the least bit be deterred. Log Nation, I just alluded to our postponed October symposium, which is now scheduled for spring 2021. With that, and as we launch our virtual LOA University this week, and after having already advised Lieutenant General Berry, Lieutenant General Kirkland, and Brigadier General Hurry, I do have a quick announcement to make. With the lingering COVID uncertainties, the LOA Executive Board, with much measured deliberation, decided the 2021 symposium will be virtual. Obviously, this was not an easy decision, and while nothing, of course, replaces a live event with the fellowship, the relationships, the networking, etc., we are excited and extremely optimistic that our spring 2021 virtual symposium will be an awesome event. In a similar vein as launching our inaugural week-long LOA University, I've no doubt that our spring 2021 virtual symposium will deliver as well. And a quick favor, if I may, while I have you. As you participate in and learn during this week's LOA University sessions, we will certainly welcome any and all feedback you may have. Feedback that your executive board and symposium planning team can certainly use to ensure next spring virtual symposium is a phenomenal success. And I've no doubt that it will be a phenomenal success. So as I close, please allow me to give a quick shout out to Boyd Stewart for his hard work and dedication as the Chief Learning Officer, laying the foundation for LOA University to continue, for allowing LOA University to remain a reality in 2020, albeit in a virtual format. For those who may not know, our fellow colleague at this very moment is forward deployed. So Boyd, stay safe, my friend, and from this retiree, thank you for your dedicated and continued service. So with that, thank you, Log Nation, and thank you for joining us today. I would now like to introduce everyone to Jerry Ottinger, your new Chief Learning Officer and Dean, LOAU University, to introduce today's guest. And Jerry, thank you for all you do for our great LOAU. The virtual floor is yours. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott, and welcome to day 2 of Virtual LOAU University. I'm honored still to be the Chief Learning Officer. Haven't been fired after the first day, so we're bringing you a topic for a more restricted audience today. It's Sortie Production and Management, and this is a primer that we envision will come into the spring. And once you all master this course content, we will put it more into application as part of the actual LOAU Symposium when it comes on board. So we really appreciate y'all being on board today and dialing in. This course is going to be a presentation by our ASPC and AMOS cadre, which of course we all know and work with them out of Vegas with our special training, and we send people off to really get deep into this stuff in their course that they offer in person. Now, as we drive forward, you're going to get a lesson on sortie generation principles. You're going to get some of the basic concepts, and it's going to help us as logisticians boost and think more about readiness and how to support flying operations, our core business, as we deliver air power for our nation. You're going to have a team of presenters out of the cadre there, and they will introduce themselves as they get going. We appreciate your engagement. And just like yesterday, you are free. Please drop your questions and comments into that chat box, and we will get them prepared so that we can address them toward the end of the class. So, cadre, AMOS team, here we go. Class is yours.
Hello to all of you from the English Schoolhouse here at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. I'm Captain Matt Osborne, and I'll be joined a little bit later on by my colleagues Major Tyler Deal, Senior Master Sergeant Fred Cook, and Captain Josh Carpenter. And we've been asked by LOAU University to develop a sortie production and management primer, which left us all with the same question: what exactly is a primer? In education, it's something that presents the basic elements of a subject. If that subject is reading, for example, then a primer might be a book that teaches the alphabet, like the Big Book of ABCs. In the automotive world, however, it's a preparatory code that we use to improve the coverage by better absorbing subsequent layers of paint. This presentation is less of a Big Book of ABCs and more like a coating of primer. We plan to cover some of the essentials for sortie production and management, and while we're not going to be able to finish painting by the time we have today, we do expect to have a good layer of primer built up. Those subsequent layers of paint are going to come from further discussions both here at LOAU University and back in your rooms. These are the 4 areas we're going to cover in our sortie production primer today. We'll discuss leadership and mission focus, workforce management, fleet management, and supply and consumption chain considerations. I'll start this off with a quick overview of where we are and where we need to go. You ever found yourself looking at a problem, thinking through all your options, and then proposing what you thought was a pretty good idea, only to be met with the response of, what does the AFI say? It's almost a conditioned response at this point, and it can really shut down critical thought. If you've ever gotten, or if you yourself are giving this response, do you think that it's happening to your airmen? Are your leaders from the NCO Corps on up trying to coach these ideas out, develop solutions, and figure out how we can continually improve? Or are we stifling innovation at all levels? I have to tell you that good ideas have absolutely nothing to do with rank or even experience level, as evidenced by all of the ideas that Captain and Lieutenant Osborne have tried to implement based on what he was seeing on paper, versus all of the great ideas that have come from airmen at the production effort level. They have been able to see opportunities within their day jobs to make their jobs easier, to save time, and to reduce waste. And what we have to do as logistics leaders is make a mindset shift in our organizations to encourage innovative problem solving. I am not saying that we need to shift away from a compliance culture, but what I am saying is that if we're doing innovative problem solving and we come to a roadblock that is a policy constraint, let's take that note and move on and further develop our idea. Because when I can polish that idea into a diamond and say, I have a plan that I can save this number of hours or increase our aircraft availability by this much, and the only thing that's holding me back is this one paragraph in a 300-page AFI. If you can get to that level, you're going to have people jumping through hoops trying to knock down that constraint for you. We all want to be in organizations that win, and this is one way to do that. The next slide covers two different tools that we can use when we're identifying constraints and we're solving problems in our organizations. The first tool is the PPR model, and PPR stands for People, Process, and Resources. And if you spent any time in the depots or Air Force Sustainment Center, then yes, this is a simplified version of the AFSC leadership model, with our common goal in the center being sortie production. We can think of people, processes, and resources as individual considerations that all come together and enable that common goal. If you want to do more reading on this subject in further depth than I'm going to be able to provide to you today, I encourage you to go out and Google The Art of the Possible and scroll down to Chapter 2, where you can read all about the AFSC leadership model and people, processes, and resources. It is written with depot production considerations in mind, but it's not a very hard mental leap to be able to apply those concepts to any production environment. When it comes to our people, there's a common concern in maintenance organizations of not having enough people. But PPR forces us to take that thought process a little bit deeper beyond the raw numbers and get into, well, how are we utilizing the people that we do have? And are they being utilized for the purposes of our common goal of sortie production? Does our utilization reflect that? An example of this might be, instead of having 7-level technicians out there on the flight line producing sorties, do I have 6 assistant section chiefs sitting at desks at different shifts instead of being out on the flight line, fixing aircraft and training up my excess 3 and 5 levels that I have and teaching them how to be better technicians? Under the processes realm, what am I doing and why am I doing it? If it is not related to my common goal of sortie production, but it is still essential, it is still needed, can I reduce the manpower drain or the time that is spent performing those processes so that I can increase my touch time on aircraft? And under resources, whether it's the equipment that I need to fix aircraft and produce sorties, or the facilities that I perform maintenance in, or the money that the Air Force gives me to perform the mission, we have to be good stewards of our resources. In many cases, we have what we have, and it's our duty to make the most effective use of those resources. The next model is one that we use here at the Amos Schoolhouse, and we challenge our grads and our students to use this in their everyday problem solving. It starts with identifying what the requirement is. Is it a valid requirement? Is it a bona fide need, or just a want to have or a nice to have? Once we've got our requirements solidified, we can determine, do I have the people, processes, and resources in place to provide a capability that matches that requirement? In the event that my requirement is greater than my capability to meet it, then I have a delta. But it's not enough just to identify that I have a gap between capability and requirement. We want to perform some critical thinking and figure out how we can close that gap. We also want to articulate, is this gap a risk to my mission? Is sortie production going to fail because of this delta? If it is, what's my cost to overcome that delta? Is it a monetary cost? Does it lie somewhere within one of these realms, people, processes, and resources? We want to be able to articulate our needs. If we do need more resources, then we need to articulate them with enough lead time to have those resources provided. And then there's a bumper sticker here at the bottom of the slide that comes from the Art of the Possible. And it says that any resource that's not available at the time and the location that is needed represents a constraint that must be solved. The desired end state for aircraft maintenance, well, it would be great if airplanes never broke, but we're probably a far ways away from that. The next best thing would be that whenever a technician turned around, he had everything that he needed when he needed it. So I have a broken part. I have all of the tools I need to remove that part. When I turn around, the tool is there, and I can get and maximize my touch time on the aircraft. Whenever I pull that old part, I set it down, it goes away. The new part is already there at the time that I need it with all of the consumables I need, all of the hardware, gaskets, and fluids to be able to put that new part in. Once the maintenance is done, I have to ops check that part. So do I have all of the test equipment and the age that I need when I turn around the next time? Until we get to that level, there are thousands upon thousands of incremental people, process, and resource changes that we can implement to get us a little bit closer to that goal. And I'll wrap up my section of this primer with some general guidance on being a logistics leader in our community. You can fill entire libraries with leadership lessons and books written on them. My intent is not to duplicate any of that effort here, but I do want to provide you with a couple of considerations that might focus your attention on your mission. First, I want you to be an expert in your field. You should know your craft, whether that is aircraft maintenance, logistics readiness, or munitions maintenance, and take every opportunity that you can to further your knowledge. LOAU University is a great opportunity, and I hope you get a lot out of it. But every day at work is also an opportunity to learn and to grow your expertise. If you're in a meeting, do you disconnect from that conversation that is going on when the spotlight is not on you anymore and they move on to someone else? Or are you actively listening and engaged in the conversation and hearing what your peers have to say? Because you can learn a lot from what they say and how they say it. Are you engaged in your daily production effort? Are you making time to talk to your airmen where they're actually out there making the mission happen? Because that is where those time and money saving ideas are going to come from. Next, understand what it is you're here to do. Every time your air crew straps themselves into an aircraft for a sortie, they know exactly what their mission is because they put in the long hours of planning and briefing that plan, and now they're there to execute. Do you know where your requirement to provide that sortie came from? Captain Carpenter is going to talk on that in just a couple of minutes, but it's something to know. For your wartime tasking, are you aware of what it is that you are going to be asked to do? Have you reviewed your O plan? Have you reviewed all of the details of the war and mobilization plans that are going to inform you what your expected sortie rates are going to be, what your sortie durations are, and what your expected expenditures are by those war planners? There's a lot to consider there, but when you know what your requirements are that you're supposed to be training to, you can apply people, processes, and resources to figure out how to get there from here. And finally, remember that sortie production is a team sport, and everyone has a role to play. When it comes to sortie production, we all have the same goal. We all want the same thing. Do your teammates share your vision for short sortie production greatness, or do they need help seeing the light? When you're building your plans, are you considering the capabilities and limitations of all of those supporting agencies? I want you to understand your role on the mission generating team, build relationships with your teammates, communicate your requirements, your limitations, and ask for help when you need it. Then use that broader understanding that you get from knowing everyone else's capabilities and limitations, and use that to inform your understanding of what your mission is. To put a bow on this part of the primer, never stop learning and be an expert in your field. Understand what you're here to do, how to identify constraints and affect change, and be an excellent partner in your mission-generating team. At this point, I'll pass you off to an excellent partner on my mission-generating team, Senior Master Sergeant Cook, who will talk you through workforce management.
Hello, I'm Senior Master Sergeant Fred Cook. I'll be covering the fundamentals of maintenance manpower. We'll go over the Air Force manpower determinant, the two different types of Air Force manpower determinants. Then we'll take a look at what that looks like down at the unit level and finish up with some manpower maintenance. It's a manpower management TTUs. The FMD quantifies the manpower required to accomplish tasks supported in the unit mission. At the unit level, we'll see the results of manpower studies of the unit manpower document. The FMD consists of three components: standard data, weather LOAU, standard data, application instructions, and statement of conditions. The FMD also contains manpower tables. Below is an example of the final manpower table for this particular AFS. It's broken out by number of aircraft for combat coded units and the total number of aircraft for training units. Statement of conditions describes the conditions in which the earned manpower should be utilized. On the left, the F-22 unit is broken down into two missions: combat and training. The combat coded F-22 unit is manned for 2 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week, while the training unit is manned for 3 8-hour shifts, 5 days a week, with weekend duty as required. The statement of conditions are based on aircraft's most demanding mission. For example, CC aircraft, like the F-15 combat coded unit, are based on WIP 4 or 5 requirements, whereas your training units are based on their training mission. How is that manpower document determined? In maintenance, it's produced one of two ways. On the left, it's produced either simulated or non-simulated. Simulated is going to be produced using your logistics composite model. That makes up the majority of the manpower requirement in a simulated AFMD. The LCOM provides a dynamic computer-based simulation model to statistically determine the required number of maintenance manpower requirements necessary in each AFSC to produce the desired number of sorties, flying hours, sorties and flying hours in support of a specific weapon system based on PA. Your maintenance man hour per flying hour is used when LCOM or other manpower studies are not available. You'll typically find that in brand new weapon systems like the F-35 and the KC-46. Let's take a look at what all that translates to at the unit level. Starting on the left, the first two columns represent the spaces on the unit menu dot, and the second two here represent the faces. Column 1 down there shows you your measured, needed manpower to execute your mission. Column 2 shows what you're funded to. We see that manpower start to reduce. Now, when we get into the faces, starting in your first one here, assign. Those are where you're going to see your personnel fill in the spaces on your unit personnel manual master. Then this column's here to represent the commander's reality. After that's shaken out, after your out-of-hides are there, or, placed around the group, this is the commander's reality. Vast difference there. However, there are a few TTPs we can use to mitigate this difference. First, consistently compare your UMD and your up. Know your authorizations versus your assignment. Be proactive. Use your UMD and upper games listing to justify moves. Be involved in the LCOM process. Assign a POC when you know an LCOM is coming. That way you're getting that accurate site picture of your unit. Establish relationships. Your local manpower office should be your friend, as well as your BASCOM function. And then you want to ensure accurate MIS data, as the OCOM use historical data to run its simulations. And then, last but not least, create that deliberate training plan. That training plan is going to set your workforce up for success. Remember, solid workforce management enables smooth and efficient fleet management. Speaking of smooth, up next is Captain Josh Carpenter to go over tools of the trade in fleet management.
Hello, I'm Captain Carpenter. Today I'm going to be talking to you about fleet management. What I'm going to start off with is maintenance metrics, because I think it's important to understand how our metrics play into our processes and how we can use those to improve our organization. And then we'll link that into our flying scheduling and how we can build and execute that plan. First off, we'll talk about metrics and what those can help you do as a leadership team. They're going to help communicate your process clearly. If you're digging in, you're looking at your data, you can understand what the metrics are telling you about your organization, which is going to help you identify trends, whether those are positive or negative. Take, for example, your MC rate. If your MC rate is declining or potentially it's increasing, you can go in and then take that next step and determine the root cause. So what is causing that MC rate to decline? Is there a certain process? Is there a certain resource that you're limited on that's driving that decline in your MC rate? And then that will ultimately lead to improvement in your organization. So making that change in your process, your people, your resources, that can change that and then lead to improvement in your organization. Well, we can't do that unless we use metrics the way that they're supposed to be used. And what I mean by that is metrics should be used as tools, not just as numbers or charts. I shouldn't go to the end of the month meeting for your MSEPs and your HOP and brief the maintenance group commander on what happened and what went wrong. I need to be able to understand and internalize the data that went into that. Understand what are the metrics telling me. Use those as tools to change my organization and improve it. But I can't do that unless I look at all of my metrics in aggregate. So I'm not focusing on that single metric, such as my MC rate, because I can artificially inflate my MC rate, and that might lead to negative behavior or negative metrics in other areas that are just important. I've got a quote here from Lieutenant General Fetter that kind of sums up what metrics can do for your organization. Because ultimately, it's going to help you drive decision making. As a leadership team, focus on what is the root cause in your organization and then lead to that improvement. There are 4 foundations for metrics: your fleet inventory, your schedule, your workforce management, and then your maintenance performance. Fleet inventory is fairly self-explanatory. I'm talking about what is the composition and size of your fleet. That's going to determine how you manage it. If you've only got 5 helicopters, that's going to be significantly different than if you've got 24 fighter aircraft sitting out on the ramp. But understanding what that is, because that will determine how you build that into your schedule, which is going to set the pace for your entire organization. Whether or not I'm doing my normal battle rhythm, my normal turn patterns, or if I'm going to try to push it up and go into a surge with all hands on deck, that's going to change the ops tempo during that process. Also, when you're building your schedule, it needs to be built on sound principles that are agreed upon by all agencies that are involved. What I mean by that is ops needs to be involved in this process. Air traffic control, weather, LRS, POL, all of those people that have a hand in your flying schedule need to be aware of what those planning factors are so that everybody can be on the same page. Because that will drive into your workforce management. I need to have the availability is key in this scenario. I need to have the right personnel with the right skill set on the right shift in order to meet that flying schedule. I need to have the right balance of maintainers to fix aircraft on the certain shift, and I need to have the right balance of maintenance personnel on my shift to launch those aircraft as well. So balancing those requirements. And then finally, leading into your maintenance performance. We're going to assess those using our standards, our goals, and our maintenance plan. So how well, using your maintenance performance to check how well that you've built your flying schedule and assess your performance based on that. Because ultimately the question is, are you meeting mission requirements? Which will lead me into our flying scheduling. And we need to start with our sortie and hour requirement. I need to understand, Captain Osborne talked very briefly about requirements, capabilities, and delta. So I need to start with that requirement. What does ops need to fly in order to meet their combat mission ready rates so they can go and meet their doc statement? You're going to find that in the CAF units in your route tasking memo. And then if you're in a MAP unit, your 11-2 MDS specific volume 1 will outline their training requirements. How many sorties do they need and what types of sorties do they need in order to maintain that proficiency each month? For this example, I pulled 120 sorties. That's the requirement. With that requirement, that now becomes my contracted sorties for the month. However, in maintenance, we know that I'm not going to be able to fly every single sortie that I put on the schedule. So I need to build in for attrition. And attrition is a rate that we've come up with historically that's going to project the amount of sorties that we're going to lose on any given month. In this scenario, my attrition rate is 12%. So I'm going to lose 12% of all the sorties that I schedule based on broken aircraft, based on bad weather, based on ops cancellations. Maybe they didn't have pilots. All of those different factors are going to lead to sorties that are lost. So in this scenario, I'm going to subtract my historical attrition from 1, which gives me 0.88. And then I'm going to divide my sorties that are required, my contract sorties, by that attrition factor, which gets me 136 sorties that I need to schedule in order to meet the requirement of 120 sorties. Now I know what the requirement is. I know how many sorties I need to fly each month. How do I actually project that out and put that onto a monthly calendar? We're going to use our aircraft turn patterns. So your 10 turn 8s, your 12 turn 10s, 10 pit 10 turn 8s, those are all turn patterns that we can use to execute those sorties. Maintenance generally prefers cascading turns, so going from your 12 down to your 10 down to your 8, which is going to allow for broken aircraft that happen on each go. We can do flat turns and inverted turns. However, we need to understand the impact behind that. I'm not accounting for broken aircraft, so I might not be as successful on that second go. So there's risk involved with that. But depending on the MDS that you have and the unit that you're a part of, that might be a successful turn pattern. Just understand the implications behind that. Now I know what the turn patterns are. How many aircraft do I need in order to accomplish these turn patterns? That's going to go into our commit rates and our spare factors. Using our rules of thumb, which is based on historical attrition and lessons learned, I know that if I have a unit of 24 fighter aircraft, I can't use all of those aircraft and put those on the flying schedule because I need to segregate some of those out to perform scheduled maintenance actions, to do phase. I might have other commitments such as alert or maybe training requirements such as WILT or FTD. So I need to pull some of those aircraft aside to focus on fleet health issues, which allows me to pull some of those over towards the flying schedule. In your fighters, we're looking at 65% of that. In bombers, 40%, and then 5th gen, 55%. Of those aircraft that are committed to the flying schedule, you have spares that are included in that number. So 20% of your first go is what's recommended for your spare factor. 30% if you're into a test-coded unit. 40% for surges. That could go all the way up to 100% depending on your maintenance group commander and your aircraft availability on how many aircraft you want to commit towards that surge. And then we also recommend that you're using one spare per configuration. So if you have an aircraft, if you have air-to-ground configured aircraft and air-to-air configured aircraft, you might want to have one of each. That way ops has a backup for those mission sets. And then finally, how do we determine, how are aircraft commit rates impacted by those turn patterns? Again, taking my 24 PAI unit, I'm going to use my 65% commit rate, which brings me down to 15 aircraft. So 15 of my 24, I want to focus on flying for that day. Then I'm going to use 20% of my spare factor. So in this scenario, we're going to be looking at doing a 12 turn 10. So 20% of 12 is 3. I'm going to have 3 spare aircraft and 10 prime aircraft, which makes up that 15 aircraft that are committed to the flying schedule. So if ops requirement is 22 sorties per day, and I've only got 15 aircraft to do that, that drives us in aircraft maintenance to do those turn patterns. And then finally, how does that impact our fly window? Our fly window is the time between our first takeoff and our last landing. And that's going to have impacts on the entire the wing at your base. So air traffic control, weather, your backshop maintainers, POL, all of those agencies have to be open during that entire fly window. They have to man that section of time. So what our goal is to do is to compress that fly window as tightly as possible while also meeting maintenance while meeting ops requirements. Because as much as we compress that, that's going to extend our fixed window. And our fixed window means that maintenance can have more touch time with that aircraft. We can focus more of our time on fleet health, which is going to allow us for more in-depth troubleshooting and better repairs on the aircraft. So we're not trying to band-aid fix aircraft overnight. We've got a longer time with the aircraft so we can fix them the right way. There are multiple different tools that we have, and this is a scenario where if I'm using different turn patterns, I can compress that fly window which is going to extend my maintenance touch time. And there's different tools that I have to do that. So I've got standard turns, which take me about 3.5 hours, quick turns, which compresses down to an hour, hop hits, which are also about an hour, and then rapid crew swaps, which are an hour as well. And that allows me to get new air crew into that aircraft so that I can expand that training. I'm not going to go into details on all the pros and cons here. This is for your reference to take away. I don't have the time to go through all this. Which brings us to our keys to success. If I can leave you with 3 things that I think are important about fleet management, it's predictability, building relationships, and then balancing your mission requirements with your maintenance capabilities. Predictability, the more time that I can focus on building an executable plan and then executing that plan, the more successful we are going to be as an entire organization. It's going to reduce turmoil across the organizations with my maintainers and as well as ops. And then I need to build that relationship with my maintenance and ops schedulers. If I know their requirements, I know their programs, I know what they need, I can better serve them in that regard. And then finally, balance is the key to managing mission requirements with maintenance capabilities. One of these can't happen with the other. I can't meet mission requirements if I have a broken fleet, but on the other hand, I can't have aircrew that are trained and proficient if all I'm doing is focusing on fleet health. That's all I have for you today. I'm going to pass it over to Major Beal, who's going to talk about supply and consumption chain management.
Hey everyone, I'm Major Tyler Mo Beal. The last main area we're going to cover in today's primer is supply and consumption chain management. The main objective is to enable us to be good stewards of our consumption and supply chain people, processes, and resources. We want our sortie producers to be enterprise-minded and make deliberate decisions from a place of knowledge and understanding. The goal isn't always to be the most efficient, but how can we be the most effective while having a full understanding of the second, third, fourth order effects of our decisions and the repercussions thereof. The 3 main areas we'll break this down into are consumption chain management, repair cycle management, and supply chain management. We'll start with consumption chain management as it's the closest to home. We define the consumption chain in our context as sortie producing people and processes which influence the consumption of resources. What you do and how you consume resources has an impact on the larger supply chain system, and we need to have a firm grasp on how we conduct our own business. The picture on the right is a generalized visual of a typical aircraft maintenance, supply, and consumption chain. The purple portion is the consumption chain as we define it, and the green is the rest of the supply chain. Our actions in receiving, installing, troubleshooting, removing, ordering, and turning in parts impacts the rest of the supply chain, including having effects on other aircraft maintenance organizations, like when parts are moved from one base to another or lateral support. And this is especially problematic when these actions are done unnecessarily, when people don't adhere to sound maintenance and supply practices, whether from a lack of understanding or abuse. Some tools exist to help us analyze those consumption chain actions. This list is not all-inclusive, but includes analyzing our MICAP termination codes, specifically Code 6, MICAPs being filled from base assets, and Code 9, MICAP terminated because it wasn't actually needed. Understanding what led to those terminations occurring can help to ensure we don't unnecessarily burden the system because of our mismanagement. Another tool is the serviceable turning report, which we can use to analyze what parts we are turning back into the supply system as serviceable. If you are in a back shop, it's generally a good thing. If you got an unserviceable asset, fixed it, and turned it in serviceable. But if you're in an AMU, usually serviceable turns are indicators of mismanagement of some kind. We can also analyze our can management. What parts are being canned, when, at what rate, and by whom. If one part is consistently being canned, can we change something to help alleviate that? Like up our stock levels, or maybe do more troubleshooting training if that's the issue. Maybe we get better test sets to be able to better diagnose issues. Additionally, we can look at the retest OK rate, which is a measure of how many parts that were sent to a depot repair facility were bench checked serviceable on arrival and required no repair. If this is due to troubleshooting or test sets at the depot, that's one thing, but if it's because we aren't accurately troubleshooting at the field level, we now have negatively impacted the whole supply system because of our consumption actions. Our bench stock program also falls under consumption chain. Look at how often we are doing reviews to ensure we have exactly what we need and the right quantity of it. Do we actually analyze our bench stock program and adjust stock levels accordingly? How we manage our equipment resources also has a large impact on the supply system. Do we have the right people with the right training and the right experience as our equipment and ceramic account custodians? Ensure they have the right training and know how to manage their program to include maintaining the actual equipment itself, as well as making adjustments and requesting changes to our accounts. Make sure that they know who their POCs in LRS and your MAGCOM are, as well as who the equipment specialists and program managers are for those particular items so that they can resolve them in real time. Next up, we'll cover repair cycle management, specifically at the base level. In this context, we define the repair cycle as the time between the removal of a recoverable item, XD or XF coded, and the date that the item is made serviceable, declared not repairable to station NERDs, or condemned at the base level. Our goal at the sorting producer tactical level is to ensure repair cycle assets are either repaired at the base level or sent to a repair facility as fast as possible. The three areas to hone in on are pre-maintenance time, actual maintenance time, and post-maintenance time. What impact do you have on each of those parts of the repair cycle? Any differing delays affects the pre-maintenance time. Any delays in your back shop can impact on maintenance time, actual touch time. And any delays in turning in serviceable assets on the back end can delay that post-maintenance time. Analyze your throughput in those areas in your units and determine how you can move those assets through faster in order to streamline the repair cycle and make it more effective at turning on new parts. Things to consider in analyzing our repair cycle include smear and ERT codes, where parts are sourced from, who does the maintenance, what level they can be recovered, and are those codes at the correct level? Are they where they should be? Should some items be repaired at the base level that are currently only authorized to be repaired at the depot? Then also consider what limitations are on TO's drawings and whether we can change them to make them better and give us more capabilities at our own units. All these processes can and should be rolled up in your basic repair network enhancement program. Like a HOF analyzes aircraft maintenance metrics, the RNF can be utilized as a medium to discuss issues and best practices, those people, processes, and resources at the 06 MXG MSG level. The third main area is supply chain management, which is quite a large topic. For the purposes of sortie production, we hone in on a few key concepts and terms. The first is being able to understand how logistics supply priorities are derived and how they function. All supply deliveries are sourced and sent by DoD Activity Address Code, or DODAC, or for the Air Force term is SRAN, but it's the same thing. This is what identifies the mailing, shipping, and billing addresses for government agencies. Know your DODAC and know how to establish one if you deploy or operate from a location that doesn't have one set up already. The standardized way DoD prioritizes requisitions is called the Uniform Material Movement and Issue Priority System, UMIS. UMIS is essentially the product of two factors: the Force Activity Designator, FAD, and the Urgency of Need Designator, UND. These two combine to form a priority designator, which is just a number between 1 and 15, 1 being the highest priority. Each unit is assigned a FAD, the highest priority being 1, and those combat coded units being 2. You can find your unit's FAD in ESS or ILSS, or talk to your supply folks who can help you find that information. And then the UND states whether that part is preventing the mission, preparing the mission, or is simply routine. Routine is like being stocked or replenished on the shelf in the warehouse. So you combine those two factors in a matrix, and you have what priority of requisition is. So if you are a FAD 2, and the part that you ordered is preventing the mission from happening, you would then be a PD of 2. Project codes that are assigned by the Secretary of Defense or Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff can be used to break ties and requisitions with the same PD across the Department of Defense. And each service can also set their own internal project codes that apply to only their service. Think the words. They'll have a tiebreaker for orders of the same PD within the Air Force, but they won't have a tiebreaker when it comes to competing against other DoD assets of the same PD. Also, transportation priority codes are set based upon those PDs and a few other factors, but generally speaking, PDs 1 through 3 get transportation priority 1, the highest priority, and PDs 4 through 15 are given TP2 or 3, depending on a few other factors. TP1 will get you air transport, 3 will get you surface transport. The next supply chain management topic is MSKs and RSPDs. There are 4 types of MSKs: basic, temporary high priority, contingency high priority, and high priority. And with all the varying levels of duration, approval authority, and part sources. Knowing what type of MSKs your unit is authorized and has built can help you immensely with planning and executing TUIs and contingency operations. Readiness spares packages can be mobile, in place, or consumables. And the chart here breaks down all of those kits and a lot more information about them. Lastly, there's some supply information systems that we can get access to in order to help ourselves. ILSS allows us to query assets, see how many there are, where they're located by DODA. We can also query information about an individual item, individual MSN. And we can also pull our MyCap boards for a given location. LOAU2020 has multiple different views, one of which is the supply chain management view, which allows us to pull PIDs and see information about individual parts, repair processes, what requisitions are currently out for that part, and if there are any constraints on the repair for that part. If their part is constrained or if there's a contracting constraint, that PID will tell you that you can find that in the supply chain management view. The ad hoc view allows us to pull reports like the D23, the serviceable turn-in report, MyCap delete code reports, and the QL4. All of this information can be used to analyze and better manage your supply chain management actions. As Captain Osborne talked about at the beginning, this presentation is just a primer on Sortie Production. These 4 areas that we talked about today are just a base layer upon which we can apply further coats of paint, whether that be at LOAU University, our home station, or in courses like AMOS, where each of these areas, among others, are an entire block of instruction. I also want to quickly highlight 2 other resources that are available to help you go deeper into these and many more areas. The first of which are the TTPs. And we provided a link to the Air Force TTP repository, which includes our aircraft maintenance TTP, as well as munitions maintenance TTP, and soon it will also include the logistics readiness TTP. And there are many other combat support TTPs in our repository as well. The second resource is our AMOS SharePoint site, which can help connect you to concepts, briefings, and POCs as well. Thank you for joining us in this primer, and please don't hesitate to contact any of us if you want more information or have any questions.